Have you ever felt like you're living in a world overflowing with noise? Not just the blaring car horns or the relentless stream of information from your screens. I'm talking about the noise inside you, a chaotic symphony of worries, regrets, fears, and never-ending plans. Each thought tumbling over the next, each emotion layering upon another, creating a dense, impenetrable forest where light struggles to break through. You desperately try to find a path, to push back the tangled branches, but the more you struggle, the more suffocated, the more trapped you feel, as if your own mind has become an invisible prison. We modern humans are taught to fill ourselves. Fill our minds with knowledge, fill our schedules, fill our bank accounts, fill our lives with ceaseless experiences. And when it comes to our minds, we apply the same logic. We must fill it with focus, with positive thoughts, by fighting off the negative. We tirelessly learn to control our thoughts, to eliminate unwanted emotions, to clean our minds as if they were messy rooms needing purification. But what happens when these efforts fail? When that inner forest keeps growing, when the internal noise never truly quiets, we plummet into an abyss of frustration, blaming ourselves for not being strong enough to conquer our own inner landscape. This is a painful paradox, an injustice of perception we have unwittingly imposed upon ourselves. We seek peace in an empty mind, yet we pursue it through efforts filled with tension and resistance. We crave liberation, yet we inadvertently shackle ourselves with the belief that the mind is an enemy to be defeated, a void to be filled. But what if I told you that everything you thought you knew about emptying your mind was a profound misunderstanding? What if the true power lies not in trying to clear it out, but in a radical act of letting go? There is a subtle truth we've missed, an ancient wisdom that can change everything, not through battle, but through a gentle acceptance. This is not about a dramatic victory over yourself, but a quiet realization, a moment of stillness deep enough to transform your entire life. Come with me, through the lens of a Zen story, as we rediscover an idea that seems simple, yet has been profoundly misunderstood. The idea of emptiness, a state not of absence, but of the fullness of possibility. A space where everything is allowed to exist and pass, without judgment, without clinging. It has the power to shift how you perceive suffering, the meaning of life, and your capacity for inner peace. It can change everything. In a lush green valley, where a tranquil river flowed past ancient forests and rice paddies, lived a small village. By that river lived a ferryman named Kenji. He wasn't an old man with the white beard of fables, but a young man in his 20s, his eyes carrying an unspeakable sorrow, a perpetual melancholy. Kenji's wooden boat, though well-maintained, always seemed heavy, drifting sluggishly on the water as if carrying an invisible, colossal stone. Each stroke of his oar was laborious, as if he was battling a relentless current pulling him backward. Looking at Kenji, one sensed a heaviness not just in his muscles, but interwoven into every fiber of his being, every breath he took. He carried a burden no one could see, a shadow that clung to him, dimming even the brightest days. This shadow wasn't physical. It was woven from threads of regret and self-blame. Kenji had once made a mistake, an accident that, though unintentional, had claimed the life of his brother. Time had passed, everyone in the village had forgiven him, some even no longer spoke of it. But for Kenji, each sunrise was a reminder of the weight of the past. Each night brought the haunting echoes of what had happened. He believed he had to carry that guilt forever, that he didn't deserve peace, that he had to pay the price with the very heaviness in his soul. He clung to it tightly, as if letting go would be a betrayal of the one he had lost. This suffering grew, consuming his joy and hope, causing him to sink deeper into the well of clinging, the well of a mistaken view of his own existence and the world. One quiet afternoon, as the last rays of sun lingered on the water, an old Zen master named Haku appeared by the riverbank. The master seemed unhurried, simply sitting beneath an ancient tree, his gentle eyes observing Kenji struggling with his heavy boat. Kenji regularly ferried passengers across the river, and today he was not surprised to see the master step into his boat. But there was something different about Master Haku. A stillness emanated from him, non-judgmental, uncurious, only pure presence. As the boat glided into the middle of the river, Master Haku, with a voice as calm as flowing water, asked, "My son, what do you carry on this boat that makes it so heavy?" Kenji sighed, his exhaustion evident in every word. He began to recount his pain, his mistake, the indelible memories, believing these were the things weighing down his boat. Master Haku listened in silence. His eyes remained as still as a ripple-less lake. As they neared the other bank, a sudden strong current appeared, causing the boat to sway. Kenji had to use all his strength to steady the oar. It was then that Master Haku, still serene, unexpectedly asked, "Kenji, if you wish to reach the other shore, would you carry this river with you?" The sudden question stunned Kenji. He looked at the vast river, then back at Master Haku, his face filled with confusion and bewilderment. "Master," he stammered, "how could I carry the entire river? I only need to cross it." Master Haku said nothing more, simply smiled gently, and closed his eyes. Kenji continued to row, but the master's question echoed repeatedly in his mind, like an unsettling, mysterious, and challenging refrain. The more he tried to find an answer, to analyze the meaning, the more entangled his mind became, and the heavier his boat seemed. He didn't know that this very effort to understand and control was part of the burden he carried. Just as Brian Stevenson spoke of the injustice within the legal system, here, the injustice lay in how we treat our own minds. We struggle with what should simply be allowed to flow. Kenji slumped onto the riverbank, his body utterly exhausted, not just from the weight of the boat and the strong current, but from the burden in his mind. Despair surged like a violent wave, engulfing all hope. He looked at Master Haku with tear-filled eyes, his voice a barely audible whisper. "Master, I can't do it anymore. I've tried everything to understand your words, to lighten this boat, but I only feel heavier. I cannot set it free." Master Haku maintained an unusual calm. He slowly rose, walked to Kenji, and gently placed his weathered, yet warm, hand on the young man's shoulder. His gaze was directed at the flowing river, not a distant look, but one of complete presence, as if he was looking directly into the essence of all things. "My son," Master Haku spoke, his voice deep and resonant like the chime of a morning temple bell. "You are trying too hard to understand, too hard to control. You are trying to push the water, to pull at the invisible rope you believe is binding you. What do you see?" Kenji looked up, seeing his boat still floating heavily on the water, its weight unchanged. He looked at the endlessly flowing river, then back at Master Haku, a void beginning to appear in his mind, not of peace, but of utter exhaustion. He had no more strength to resist. And then, Master Haku continued, each word like a cool drop of water seeping into the parched earth of Kenji's soul. "The bamboo was not held by an invisible rope. Your boat is not heavy because of what you carry on it. It is held, it is heavy, by your very effort of not wanting it to be there. If you wish for it to be free, you need not pull, you need not push. You simply need to see it, and let go of the intention to control it. Let it be, and it will find its own way." Kenji was stunned. He didn't just hear with his ears, but with his entire being. He had been so preoccupied with resisting, with trying to make things other than their nature. He had tried to empty his mind by fighting every thought, every memory, but it was that very struggle that formed the chains. He had viewed his suffering as an enemy to be defeated, a burden to be cast off, without realizing that his resistance only solidified it. This was the mistaken view of the nature of suffering and clinging that Buddhism often speaks of. We suffer not because something happens, but because of how we cling to it, how we refuse to accept the impermanence of all things. Master Haku continued, his voice growing more resonant, not in space, but in the depths of Kenji's soul. "My son, you understood that you cannot carry this river to the other shore. So why do you try to carry the river of the past and the rivers of worry when you wish to step into the present moment? Your boat is heavy only when you try to turn the river into your burden." Kenji closed his eyes. He vividly recalled his incessant struggles. He had once thought that to be free, he had to empty himself by eliminating everything. But now he saw clearly what he needed to do was not to eliminate, but to change how he interacted with those currents. He realized that impermanence was not just a concept, but a universal law, a truth about everything, including pain and memories. They arise and pass away, like water in a river. His clinging, or his pushing them away, was what created suffering. Just as Bryan Stevenson speaks of the injustice within the legal system, that it's not always about direct combat, but sometimes about seeing the truth starkly, accepting that some things are beyond our control, and from that, finding the strength to rise and change. For Kenji, this was a moment of inner liberation. He realized that pain was not an enemy, but a teacher. The boat was not heavy because of what it carried, but because of how he had perceived that burden. In that moment, an unusual stillness enveloped Kenji. The chirping of birds became clearer, the rustling of leaves in the wind like a whisper of nature. He took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air fill his lungs, relaxing his body, relaxing his mind. He was no longer trying to push or pull anything. He was simply present there, with the river, with the boat, with his own pain. And then a miraculous thing happened. The bamboo master Haku had mentioned, still there, floating lightly on the lake's surface, untouched by any external force, slowly gently rose above the water, and began to drift freely with the natural current of the lake, eventually merging into the small stream leading out. It was a vivid image, a clear symbol of liberation. It was not forced, not pulled out, but liberated itself when there was no more clinging. This was not a miracle, but a revelation of truth. Kenji's boat, and his mind, could also become light like that. It would be free not when he emptied it by discarding everything, but when he let go of his clinging to them, and allowed them to flow with the impermanent current of life. The story of Kenji and the heavy boat, like any Zen parable, is not just for entertainment. They are mirrors. Mirrors that reflect ourselves, the burdens we unwittingly carry, and the chains we create through our own mistaken views of life. We have learned that emptying the mind is not a battle to eliminate or control. Instead, it is a profound letting go, an act of compassion towards ourselves, allowing all things to flow according to their impermanent nature. When Kenji realized he didn't need to carry the entire river to cross to the other shore, he found freedom. He learned to see pain, mistakes, and even cherished memories not as burdens to cling to, but as parts of life's flowing current. He accepted that suffering is not something to be avoided, but a teacher, an essential part of the journey. And it was in that acceptance that he found peace. This is the core message that Buddhist wisdom has conveyed for thousands of years. Liberation comes from understanding the nature of clinging and non-self. You are not your thoughts, and you are not defined by the burdens you believe you must carry. Just as Bryan Stevenson passionately advocates for justice, to free souls trapped by injustice and flawed systems, this wisdom invites us to free ourselves from the internal prisons of mistaken views and clinging to a fixed, suffering self. True freedom lies not in absolute control, but in realizing we can let go of the need to control. So, after this story, what are your thoughts on the lesson from the parable of the heavy boat? Have you ever experienced a moment of awakening, or a profound realization in your life? A moment when a burden suddenly lifted, or a truth revealed itself and changed how you perceived everything? Share your story in the comments below. Your sincere sharing could be an invaluable source of inspiration for others on their path to finding peace. And are there other Buddhist parables or aspects of spiritual wisdom that you'd like us to explore in future videos? Let us know so we can continue this journey together, seeking light in the hidden corners of the soul.